Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Evelyn Lee. Here are today's top stories. President Biden surveys tornado damage in Kentucky. He visits one of the worst hit cities, Mayfield, in the western part of the state. And the president signs executive orders targeting transnational criminal organizations, including drug dealers, cartels, and human traffickers. 8 months after his conviction, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin enters a guilty plea in the civil rights case stemming from the death of George Floyd. We'll take a look at what this means. Further pushback against critical race theory in Florida. A new bill would allow individuals to sue schools and corporations for conducting CRT training. 28,000 unvaccinated students in Los Angeles will no longer be barred from school next month. The LA School Board votes to delay enforcing its COVID-19 vaccine mandate for students. But some parents want to see the mandate struck down for good. Award-winning singer Alicia surprised New Yorkers today with a concert in the heart of New York City. News of the concert wasn't made public until yesterday. We'll take a look. President Biden is surveying the damage caused by last weekend's tornadoes in Kentucky. He pledges that current federal aid will continue well into the future. Here are the details.
President Biden arrived in Mayfield, Kentucky on Wednesday after more than 30 tornadoes tore through Kentucky and 7 other states over the weekend. At least 88 people were killed and thousands are now homeless or without power. Biden surveyed damage in the towns of Mayfield and Dawson Springs. He promises the federal government will continue to help months into the future.
I've instructed my team to make you all aware of everything that is available from a federal level. And some of it has to do outside of FEMA, outside of the Homeland Security. There's other programs, including education, a whole range of things. So.
Biden praises the local residents for coming together to help as a community. He says, just as there are no red tornadoes and blue tornadoes, there are no red states and blue states when disasters like this happen. Kentucky officials, FEMA, and Homeland Security officials briefed the president on the situation.
As we sit here today, we have over 600 National Guard or nearing that deployed over the 18 counties that have been hit. And they're doing everything from continuing search to verifying information of those that we believe have been found.
Mayfield in western Kentucky was one of the hardest hit towns. The governor said Tuesday that search and rescue workers expect to find more bodies. More than 100 people were missing.
Parents will soon receive their final child tax credit payments under the COVID relief law. Today, the IRS sent out the last monthly payments to families. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more details from D.C.
For months, families have gotten up to $300 per child every month from the government under the child tax credit as part of COVID relief. But those payments are set to be the last because the Senate has not yet passed Biden's social welfare bill to extend the program for another year.
You know, if you're worried about everyday expenses, you're worried every day, has meant that I feel less stressed.
The federal government has spent $93 billion on the program since it started. To keep these payments coming, the Senate must pass the Build Back Better bill by December 28th. But it's unclear whether that's a deadline that can be met. This Christmas deadline has always been an ambitious one, but recently it's looking even more ambitious. That's for a couple of reasons. One is because the Senate parliamentarian, that is the Senate Rules Advisor, has not yet given any final rulings on this overall bill, and that's a necessary procedural step in order to move this bill forward in the Senate. And we know Senator Manchin is still looking like a holdout vote on this bill. Senator Manchin has been talking with the president this week to hash out negotiations. Senate Leader Schumer and the White House says these talks are going well.
Senator Joe Manchin is a friend of the president, and we've had very good conversations. The president has had 2 great conversations with him this week that have been productive, they've talked, even Manchin has said this, they talked about iterations of the bill. I'm not going to say more because even Manchin said this person-to-person conversation should be kept that way.
House Speaker Pelosi has floated the idea of making up these payments to families if the Build Back Better bill passes after the new year. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The National Archives made public today nearly 1,500 documents related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Historians are eager to learn more about the event that changed the course of American history. The documents include secret CIA cables and internal memos from the U.S. government's investigation. But it seems there is nothing that could radically reshape what we know about the events. On November 22, 1963, a man named Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed President Kennedy in Dallas. For decades, many have been skeptical that Oswald was solely responsible for the assassination. This batch of documents is released based on a federal statute that calls for the government to disclose its records. Additional documents are expected to be made public next year. And drug dealers, cartels, and human traffickers are making billions as they fuel the vices plaguing the U.S. President Biden signed executive orders aimed at putting out these fires. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
President Biden has signed 2 executive orders, both of which the White House says will help counter the threat posed by transnational criminal organizations to American communities. According to the United Nations, transnational criminal organizations, known as TCOs, make an estimated hundreds of billions of dollars a year. This is through drug trafficking, human trafficking, and other black market services. One of Biden's executive orders forms a U.S. Council on Transnational Organized Crime. This council is supposed to be comprised of officials from federal agencies like the DOJ and the Pentagon working to develop whole-of-government plans to address top TCO threats. The White House says the second EO expands the government's ability to target and sanction actors involved in the illegal drug trade. As part of Biden's anti-TCO campaign, the Treasury Department will sanction 10 people and 15 entities from across the globe that have been involved in this criminal drug trade. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is taking further steps to fight critical race theory, or CRT. His state already banned teaching it in public schools, but a new bill would also allow people to sue corporations that do CRT training. NTD's Ellison Lee brings us more.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis proposed the Stop the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act, or the Stop Woke Act, on Wednesday. He calls it the strongest bill of its kind in the nation, and it will take on critical race theory in both schools and corporations.
It will put into statute the Department of Education's prohibition on CRT in K through 12 schools. We are going to be including in this legislation giving parents a private right of action to be able to enforce the prohibition on CRT, and they get to recover attorney's fees when they prevail.
Under this bill, workers would also be able to sue their employers for CRT training. The governor says CRT training at workplaces not only violates the Florida Civil Rights Act, but also creates a hostile work environment because it attacks people based on their race. He gives some examples.
Bank of America has had training teaching that the United States is a system of, quote, white supremacy and encourages their employees to become woke at work. Verizon has taught employees that America is fundamentally racist, and they've even promoted defunding the police. And a Google employee program claims that America is, quote, a system of white supremacy and that all Americans are, quote, raised to be racist.
DeSantis says people who teach CRT fear lawsuits more than a fine from a state agency. That's because in a lawsuit, what they teach will be discovered and exposed to the public. The governor says he considers wokeness a form of cultural Marxism.
They really want to tear at the fabric of our society and our culture and things that really we've taken for granted, like the ability of parents to direct the upbringing of their kids.
Florida lawmakers will be taking up the bill when the legislature reconvenes next month. Allison Lee, NTD News.
And you probably know that NIH Director Francis Collins is retiring soon, leaving his post by the end of this year. But did you also know that Collins is a folksy guitar player? As part of his goodbye, he left Americans with a classic modified for the times we're in.
Somewhere past the pandemic, When we're free, there's a life I remember, full of activity.
Collins dedicated this song to everyone suffering from the pandemic. HHS Secretary Javier Becerra thanked Collins for his 12 years of service. The soon-to-retire director said he'll leave knowing that the NIH is in great hands. His last day at the federal agency will be the 19th. Lawrence Tabak will then serve as the acting director until a director is formally nominated by the president and confirmed by the state. Amtrak has suspended its COVID-19 vaccine mandate for employees. That's according to its chief executive officer. And now the company no longer expects service disruptions in January.
Amtrak CEO Bill Flynn said that employees who don't get the vaccine can be tested regularly instead. On Tuesday, the passenger railroad operator said it was suspending its vaccine-only mandate for employees. Currently, less than 500 Amtrak workers are unvaccinated, according to the CEO. A recent federal court order, in part, informed Amtrak's decision. That order halted the enforcement of President Biden's executive order, which required federal contractors to mandate the vaccine for their employees. The CEO said this caused Amtrak to reevaluate its own policy towards vaccine mandates. And Tesla CEO Elon Musk has spoken out against COVID vaccine policies. He says those shots should not be mandatory in the U.S., particularly when they leave employees leaving to choose between the vaccine and their job. Musk said this in an interview with Time magazine. The billionaire has been vaccinated, and he says he is pro-vaccine. According to CNBC, Google told its employees they will lose pay and eventually be fired if they don't comply with its vaccine requirements. The outlet cited internal documents. According to a memo among Google's leadership, employees had to show proof of vaccination electronically or apply for an exemption, such as a medical or a religious exemption, by December 3rd. After that date, the company would start reaching out to employees who didn't upload their vaccine status or who didn't get a vaccine without an approved exemption. Workers from United Airlines were asking a federal court to stop the enforcement of their company's vaccine mandate. 3 judges in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals considered the request, but the federal court panel ultimately turned it down. Though one judge said he would have blocked the mandate, that mandate forces workers with religious or medical exemptions to be placed on unpaid leave.
A key witness took the stand today in the trial of former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter. He's an expert on use of force, and he was asked if Potter was justified in using deadly force against Daunte Wright. NTD's Jason Perry has a story.
Seth Wayne Stoughton is an associate professor at the University of South Carolina School of Law, and he's also an expert on the use of force. During his testimony, he explained that there are many factors at play when an officer must quickly decide whether to use deadly force.
So after identifying the foreseeable effects of the threat, then the question turns to the officer's response. It requires looking at the officer's actions and identifying what are the foreseeable effects of the officer's actions.
The prosecutor asked Stoughton directly if former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter was justified in using deadly force during the confrontation with Daunte Wright. And he said a reasonable officer would not have concluded that there was an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, and that the use of deadly force was excessive and disproportionate to the threat presented. He went on to say,
regardless of whether the reasonable officer would have perceived an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, the use of deadly force under the circumstances was inappropriate because of the danger that it created to the other 2 officers and the passenger in Mr. Wright's vehicle.
He was later asked if he had formed an opinion on whether he thought Potter had meant to fire her taser.
Although she did not actually use a taser, as I said earlier, I believe the evidence indicates that she intended to use a taser.
Potter's former colleague, Police Sergeant Mike Peterson, is also a use of force expert. He testified under cross-examination from one of Potter's attorneys. Peterson said the decision to use a taser or any other type of force must be made in a very short amount of time, and that some officers have confused their gun for a taser. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
And Derek Chauvin, the officer convicted in George Floyd's death, enters a new plea of guilty in the federal case on Wednesday. Chauvin originally pleaded not guilty. What does the reversal mean? NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin pleads guilty to federal charges on Wednesday. He admits he violated George Floyd's civil rights by using excessive force that caused his death. This comes after he originally pleaded not guilty in September. He was convicted of state murder 8 months ago.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in that case and has been in solitary confinement in state prison. But claiming responsibility in his federal case might help him receive a reduced sentence. Without a plea deal, the judge says the 45-year-old former officer could have faced life in prison.
So today is still the same pain I've been felt.
George Floyd's brothers, along with their nephew, were in the courtroom when Chauvin formally pleaded guilty.
I'm still feeling the same pain, anger I felt in the beginning because he could have did this last year.
The plea document says federal prosecutors are recommending a sentence between 20 and 25 years. As part of the deal, Chauvin also pleaded guilty to violating the rights of a 14-year-old boy. He allegedly knelt on the boy and hit him with a flashlight during a 2017 arrest.
Had he been held accountable for what he did in 2017 to that minor, George Floyd would still be here.
While Chauvin waits for his final sentencing, his latest guilty plea allows him to avoid another high-profile trial. The other 3 officers who were also indicted in the Floyd case have yet to reverse their not guilty plea. They were slated for a trial in January. Iris Tao, NTD News.
And up next, in New York City, 2 suspects were caught with enough fentanyl to kill entire cities. They were arrested but then released without bail. We spoke with the former head of New York's Drug Enforcement Task Force. And award-winning singer Alicia Keys surprised New York City today with a concert. News of the concert wasn't made public until yesterday. We were there to take a look, coming up on NTD News. New buildings in New York City won't be allowed to use natural gas. The City Council today voted to ban natural gas hookups in most new constructions. Lawmakers say this is to reduce carbon emissions. Once New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio signs the bill, most new buildings under 7 stories won't be allowed to use natural gas starting in late 2023. And for new buildings with over 7 stories, they won't be allowed to use natural gas starting in 2027. Instead of gas or oil, these new buildings must use electricity for cooking, heating, and hot water. Hospitals, commercial kitchens, and laundromats are exempt. Natural gas is currently New York City's main source of electricity. Switching to all-electric buildings could mean higher prices for residents to heat their homes. Americans are dying because of opioid overdoses every day, particularly from fentanyl, which is extremely deadly in small doses. In New York City, 2 drug traffickers got caught with fentanyl, but were later released. NTD's Ariane Pastar has more.
2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough to kill you. That's about the size of this grain of rice here. Now recently, 2 drug traffickers got caught in New York City with 5 pounds of fentanyl, which is pretty much the same size as this bag and can kill over 1 million people. But the judge didn't set any bail and just let him go. According to a New York newspaper, the local district attorney requested $50,000 bail for each defendant. Judge Karen Gopi decided not to set any bail.
The judges need to be held accountable. You can't just be letting people out of jail when they're distributing poisonous fentanyl.
Derek Maltz is the former chief of the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force. He says judges and prosecutors are following liberal policies that are soft on criminals.
We call it the hugs for thugs policies. They don't work. They failed. We have to hold these people accountable. 5 pounds of fentanyl can kill over 1 million people. That's a chemical weapon in our country. It sounds a little bit dramatic, but if you think about it and look at the death statistics, it's not out of the question. Like, we should be treating that as a very serious crime.
Maud says that if we look at the bigger picture, the fentanyl coming into the U.S. can be seen as an attack on American citizens.
The cartels are working very closely with the Chinese transnational criminals. They're flooding our streets with the poisonous fentanyl. And the reality is we have to treat it like a terrorist act. There's never been in the history of this country more deaths, all right, from any terrorist organization of American citizens.
I reached out to the court to ask why no bail was set for the two suspects. They didn't provide any details on the case before broadcast. Ariane Pastar, NTD News, New York.
And today, President Biden acknowledged the threat of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids coming into the U.S. He issued an order declaring it a national emergency, which will grant various agencies more powers to stop the drugs from coming in. Eric Adams is set to take office as the next mayor of New York City. This week, he announced the appointment of the first female commissioner of the New York City Police Department.
Mayor-elect Eric Adams has already said months ago that he wanted to appoint the first female NYPD commissioner.
But I'm particularly proud of the historic choice we have made, our first women police commissioner.
He picked New York City native Keyshawn Sewell. She's currently serving as chief of detectives at the Nassau County PD, supervising around 350 officers. She says she already knows what her main focus will be.
We will be laser focused on violent crime with an emphasis on guns. We'll arrest violent criminals, take guns off the street, and then build the cases to help keep them off.
Both Adams and Sewell acknowledge the significance of having a black female holding the post.
I am mindful of the historic nature of this announcement. As the first woman and only the third black person to lead the NYPD in its 176-year history.
Sewell is set to take office on January 1st.
And award-winning singer Alicia Keys surprised New Yorkers and tourists today with a concert in the heart of New York City. News of the concert wasn't made public until yesterday, so many fans were pleasantly surprised. NTD's Chen Yun was at the Rockefeller Center in Manhattan.
I'm here in New York City's Rockefeller Center. 15-time Grammy Award winner Alicia Keys is giving a free concert to commemorate the holiday season, the resiliency of New Yorkers, and to celebrate her new album, Keys.
I wanted to do a surprise, something special for my hometown. Are we in my hometown, New York City?
The concert kicked off with a performance by New York's own figure skating in Harlem. After the performance, the rink was again open to the public, and people crowded to get a picture of the star.
You know what, it's hard to skate and hold your phone up at the same time.
Keys sang 4 songs, including her new single, Old Memories.
Old memories, they don't go away. They show up before you leave and disappear when you wish they'd stay.
And the hit Empire State of Mind.
Brand new lights will inspire you. Here it from New York, New York, New York.
The concert was only announced Tuesday, so for many, it was a big surprise.
We're downstairs and saw some sound equipment, and there was just Alicia Keys names all over, and I was like, wait, is she performing?
This is our first time in New York City, so it was just such a cool experience getting that surprise because we had no idea she was performing. So it was awesome.
It's kind of crazy. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime thing that I thought I never would be able to see. She really took us by surprise. I thought I would just be skating today.
Keys' performance is part of NBC's Today City Concert Series. Chenny Wu, NTD News, New York.
And Golden State Warriors sharpshooter Stephen Curry became the NBA's all-time leading three-point shooter. This in last night's game against the Knicks. Curry has now knocked down 2,974 long balls in his illustrious 13-year NBA career. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
Just 4 minutes into the game, right here at Madison Square Garden, Curry hit one from 28 feet out and now has more threes than anyone in NBA history. The game was subsequently stopped, and he was presented with a jersey from fellow NBA three-point legends Reggie Miller and Ray Allen. There's now no doubt who the greatest three-point shooter is in NBA history.
Obviously, it's an amazing accomplishment. He achieved the #1 status. He beat Ray Allen 500 games prior. So that alone is astounding, 500 games.
I mean, I think it was expected. He's the greatest shooter of all time, and it was only a matter of time. Even when he was like halfway there, I think a lot of people knew like he was going to be the greatest shooter of all time.
Curry is already the single-season record holder with 402 threes, which he set during the 2016 season. Before his arrival in 2009, no one had even approached 300 in a season. His ability to not only catch and shoot, but to hit off the dribble has put him in rarefied air and changed how everyone else plays the game.
Yeah, so Steph, obviously, I feel like, me growing up in this era, like I'm young, so I'm used to his play and everything. So he's completely changed the game because now everybody wants to shoot from three. I know I played.
What he's done for the league, the three-point game is completely changed because of him. I can't even put it into words. It's like astounding, like what he did.
The closest active player to Curry's three-point mark is Brooklyn's James Harden, who has just over 2,500 and is a year younger than Curry. Dave Martin, NTD News, New York.
Longtime waitress Dolores Jean-Pierre is retiring after 4 decades of serving customers. Longtime customers stopped by to say their goodbyes and give gifts. NTD's Cynthia Kai spoke with Dolores and some customers to hear about the fond memories made at the restaurant over the decades.
Dolores Jean-Pierre, a longtime waitress at Oli's Waffle Shop in Alameda, California, retired on December 14th after 42 years of working there. Longtime customers dropped by the shop to visit her and wish her well. Dolores shared that the restaurant, her coworkers, and customers mean everything to her.
Oli's mean to me, it's in my heart. It's like family. It means it's a personal meaning from me. It's just not a restaurant job or a coffee shop. It's a deep feeling for me. It's very deep. I love everything about it.
She was hired in 1978 and served through parts of 6 decades, from the 70s to today. Dolores says throughout the years, it was the kindness from her coworkers and appreciation from her customers that kept her going.
Well, 28 years coming out of Fremont. I get up at 3 in the morning, like I said, and I leave Fremont at 3:30, get here at 4 o'clock, open the doors at 5:30 for the customers. Just the appreciation that they showed back to me kept me going.
She says the most important advice she can give people, no matter the occupation, is to be kind. The store owners and staff say they will miss her, but she will always be part of the family.
And she'll always be a part of this business. She will never go away. We've got sketches of her, drawings of her, paintings of her, as we do all of our employees. We can put any painting of a bird or whatever up on the wall, but we choose to put our employees on the walls because those are the people that make this business work. It's not me, it's not my wife, it's the staff, it's the community, it's the customers.
Longtime customers visited the restaurant to give her gifts and flowers, sign her retirement journal, and say their farewells.
We're going to really miss her a lot. She's very friendly, making sure my coffee cup was always full, and always took the time to stop and talk and see how everybody's doing. She's historic. It's great.
He says he has known Dolores for many years and attended football games with her. Another customer said Dolores always remembers people by name and makes everyone feel welcome in the restaurant.
When I walked in the door, I didn't have any idea she was going to remember my name. There's just no way. You know what I mean? It had been a month, and she only saw me one time. And I walked in the door. I just barely got in the door. She said, "Hi, it was Keith, wasn't it?" Or something like that. I said, "Yeah, I'm in. I'm a member of the club." I sat down. I was like, "Yeah, this is great." You know what I mean? And everybody she greeted, and I was now part of that.
Keith has been a longtime customer for 30 years. He says Dolores would chat with customers and continue chatting with them as she waited at other tables. Eventually, others would join the conversation until the restaurant was filled with joyful chattering.
Well, I want to say if you guys didn't make it today, farewell is not goodbye. Goodbye is too final, but farewell, and I'll be in and out, seeing you around the city of Alameda.
Memories can be made anywhere, even in a restaurant. And Dolores has made 42 years worth of fond memories with her customers and coworkers. She says she'll now take some time off to relax, but will still be around to say hi every now and then. Reporting in Alameda, California, Cynthia Kai, NTD News.
Coming up, a Tesla employee is arrested for shooting and killing a coworker at a factory parking lot in California. The suspect is booked in jail. And Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi addresses the rise in theft in her elected district. We'll bring you the details when we return with NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
The ongoing supply chain crisis? Big tech and other woke companies giving billions to the liberal left? Where will you shop for Christmas? Go to Mammoth Nation. We created a safe place for patriots to spend their money for Christmas and beyond. Shop thousands of products from American and veteran-owned businesses. Shop to the right, give to the right. This is how we fight tyranny. Go to mammothnation.com right now and become a lifetime member today. Use promo code EPIC and save 30%.
Oh, hey, doesn't it feel like there's communists everywhere? In fact, the Chinese Communist Party has been subverting America from every angle. So whether it's compromising our politicians, controlling Hollywood, manipulating Wall Street, or infiltrating our schools, they have stopped at nothing to take down America. And I believe that in order for us to not become like China, we need citizens who know the truth. So go on over to getepic.com, stay informed with a subscription to the Epic Times, and you will get instant access to this infographic.
In California, a Tesla employee is arrested for shooting and killing a coworker. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more details.
Police arrested 29-year-old Anthony Salima of Milpitas for shooting and killing a coworker at the Tesla factory in Fremont. Law enforcement responded to calls for medical aid at a Tesla factory parking lot on Monday afternoon. When they arrived, they found a male victim with at least one gunshot wound. He was pronounced dead at the scene. They recovered several expended .223 rifle casings nearby. Homicide detectives responded to the scene. They learned that the victim and Salima were arguing earlier in the day. Salima had suddenly walked off the job. The victim was shot in the parking lot after he finished a shift. Detectives arrested the suspect in Milpitas, where he immediately surrendered. He is booked at Santa Rita Jail. The investigation is still ongoing. NTD reached out to Tesla for a comment but did not hear back in time. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
And Nancy Pelosi was asked about the recent rise in retail crime in her district of San Francisco. She replied with some strong words of disapproval and showed support for the city's mayor in her recent actions to curb the crime. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi commented on the recent numerous retail thefts in San Francisco, which is Pelosi's district.
Well, it is. It's absolutely outrageous. Obviously it cannot continue. But the fact is that there is an attitude of lawlessness in our country that springs from I don't know where.
San Francisco and surrounding areas have seen a big increase in organized retail theft recently. Pelosi said that she agrees with the San Francisco Mayor London Breed in that the spike in theft needs to be stopped. On Tuesday, Breed announced several initiatives to combat the city's rising crime, including emergency police funding.
What I'm proposing today and what I will be proposing in the future will make a lot of people uncomfortable. and I don't care. At the end of the day, the safety of the people of San Francisco is the most important thing to me. And we are past the point where what we see is even remotely acceptable.
The San Francisco police chief announced on Tuesday that the California Highway Patrol, along with the SFPD, retrieved over $200,000 of stolen merchandise and made 2 arrests.
They coordinate with each other, and they plan traffic patterns and the rest so that they can reach their goal and depart very quickly.
Pelosi also said that an upcoming bill could have some provisions that address the issue of selling stolen products online by having sellers verify where the products come from. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.
The San Francisco School District reached a new budget after falling millions of dollars into debt. The proposed budget will keep the district in local control instead of being taken over by the state.
California State nearly took over the San Francisco Unified School District for lack of a suitable budget. But on December 14th, they proposed a new plan that the San Francisco Board of Education approved. The plan involves a $90 million spending reduction. The district was previously $100 million in debt. The district plans to phase out both unused and services with limited numbers of students. One member cited declining enrollment.
Going back to that, we're seeing workforce crisis, similar to what we're experiencing here, as well as the loss of student enrollment. That really was a real consistent challenge that school boards are tackling in all areas of the state.
The board also cited reducing duplicate funding, spending money multiple times on the same project. Spending cuts were guided by a state-assigned fiscal expert. The budget plan will be submitted to the California Department of Education on December 15th.
The Los Angeles School Board has voted to delay enforcing its COVID-19 vaccine mandate for students 12 and older. If the deadline wasn't pushed back, 28,000 unvaccinated students would be at risk of being barred from school. But for some parents, the delay doesn't go far enough. We hear from a parent who's challenging the mandate in court.
28,000 unvaccinated students in Los Angeles no longer face being barred from in-person learning next month. The LA School Board Tuesday voted to push back the deadline of its student vaccine mandate from January 10th to the fall of 2022. A reporter for El American captured the moment parents protesting the mandate heard the news.
Today, the board voted to suspend enforcement.
The board said its decision was based on concerns over learning disruptions that could be caused by transferring tens of thousands of students to independent study. 87% of eligible students in the LA School District are vaccinated. In a statement, school board member Jackie Goldberg emphasized that although the deadline is delayed, the mandate remains. But some LA parents are still hoping they can strike it down in court. Meanwhile, in San Diego, a group of parents is fighting the same mandate in their school district. Sharon McKeeman, founder of Let Them Choose, a group spearheading the litigation, says she thinks the LA School Board's decision is due not just to significant logistical issues, but also to legal ones. McKeeman calls the mandates unlawful and says they're unlike other vaccine requirements in California.
These school districts' vaccine requirements are not the same as, the body of vaccine requirements statewide. There is a list of 10 childhood vaccines. Most of those, there's a lot of opinions about them, but they have been around substantially longer than the COVID vaccine. Most of them are for illnesses that do more severely impact young people than COVID does. And those have all been put in place through the legislative process. And so that's very different than a school district just arbitrarily saying they're going to require a very new vaccine and they're going to exclude children if they don't comply.
McKeeman says the Los Angeles and San Diego districts aren't allowing personal belief exemptions from the vaccine. This is different from the state requirements and is another reason why she believes the mandates are unlawful.
A personal belief exemption is very broad. It's protected under state law. Every student has that right when it comes to the COVID vaccine, and school districts, they do not have the authority to usurp that, and that's what we're arguing legally.
McKeeman thinks the deadline suspension in LA will aid their case because, she says, it shows the extent of the disruptions the mandate would cause. The lawsuit filed by Let Them Choose is being heard in court December 20th.
The winter season brings snowfall, and in California, snow came early in parts of the Bay Area. NTD's David Lam reports.
This is the James Lick Observatory, and it's the world's first observatory on a mountaintop. Now, the recent storm brought much-needed rainfall throughout the Bay Area, but up here at Mount Hamilton, it's already looking like a winter wonderland. Now, over to this side, there's a tree that's completely covered in snow, and an astronomer told us that it's unusual to have snow up here during this time of the year.
I'd say we get maybe on a typical year, somewhere between 3 and 6 heavy snowfalls. But this year is unusual because we've had this snow rather early in the winter season. Normally we would expect snow perhaps in the early part of the new year rather than late in December.
The Lick Observatory is located on Mount Hamilton in California, just east of San Jose. There was roughly a few inches of snow. Lynham says at Mount Hamilton, it seems they're seeing a prevalent change in weather patterns.
In February this year, February would normally traditionally be the wettest month where we get the most rain. Earlier this year, 2021, we had not a single drop of rain in February.
The observatory began operations in 1888 as part of the University of California, and due to its 4,000 feet elevation, the annual snow is a common part of the area. Locals usually find snow in the Sierra Nevada area, but as the atmospheric river came to California, several peaks in the Bay Area had snow this week. The National Weather Service announced on Wednesday that there will be light to moderate rainfall in the Bay Area, and another storm is on the way. David Lam, NTD News, California.
And still to come, a report shows the majority of Tibetan children are being forced to separate from their parents. Instead of getting raised at home, they're sent to boarding schools built by the Chinese Communist regime, where Tibetan culture and traditions are getting the boot. And in a French city, a poll decides the fate of a statue of Napoleon. City Hall has been debating its removal. Now they'll need to comply with the residents' decision. More in just a moment here on NTD News. Tibetan children as young as 4 years old are being sent away to boarding school. But these aren't your average institutes. They're built by the Chinese regime, and teachers say they're beginning to erode the region's language and culture. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
A staggering figure has come out of Tibet. Almost 80% of Tibetan children aged 6 to 18 have been placed in state-run boarding schools. There they are cut off from their families, language, and traditions. That's according to analysis of official data from U.S.-based NGO, the Tibet Action Institute. The organization's December report says the Chinese Communist regime has established a vast colonial boarding school system in Tibet, which separates children as young as 4 years old from their parents. The report quoted one parent in eastern Tibet as saying authorities converted the village schools to nursery schools in 2020. And at the same time prohibited children from studying in their villages. These children aren't even allowed to return home for holidays. And according to a teacher from eastern Tibet, teachers must speak and teach all courses in Mandarin only. That's including nursery rhymes and bedtime stories for younger students. When these children go to primary school at the age of 7, hardly any of them can speak Tibetan. While another account details something even more sinister. A female boarding student says she witnessed cases of sexual abuse and violence inside her school. She recounted that men from outside the school, as well as some male teachers, would enter the girls' dormitories. She went on to explain that beatings were so severe and frequent that students were in a state of constant fear. The Chinese Communist regime has worked to eliminate local Tibetan schools for a decade. They've arrested Tibetan school leaders, language teachers, and intellectuals, seemingly to wipe out the Tibetan tradition. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country's relationship with China has reached a breakthrough level. He made the comment to Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping during a virtual meeting between them on Wednesday. The two leaders agreed they'll stand firm in rejecting what they call Western interference. Xi Jinping also accused certain international forces of interfering in the internal affairs of China and Russia under what he describes as the guise of democracy and human rights. As Russia's relations with the West worsen, the country has cultivated closer ties with China. Putin told Xi that a new model of cooperation has been formed between their countries, based on such principles as non-interference in internal affairs and respect for each other's interests. On top of the discussions, the meeting also led observers to speculate about Xi Jinping's health. That's after he coughed 3 times in a row. Xi's cough is absent from Chinese state-owned broadcaster CCTV's footage of the meeting, but it can be seen from the Russian side's footage.
And in a French city, a statue of Napoleon was nearly replaced with the likeness of a feminist activist. This was the mayor's plan, but he eventually changed his mind after local residents pushed back. NTD's correspondent David Vives has the details.
200 years after his death, Napoleon is still in the hearts of the French people. That's the conclusion after a month-long debate over the removal of the French general statue in the city of Rouen. The city's left-leaning mayor suggested in September to replace Napoleon with a statue of a feminist activist. This triggered a wave of protest on social media, debate within the public at large, and even discussion among politicians. On Twitter, Thierry Lance, director of the Napoleon Foundation, said the City Hall's recommendation was a provocation and a mistake.
Some people love their country and their history, and it seems to me that this fact alone makes other people really angry, and they come after them for only this reason.
The Napoleon statue is currently being restored at a remote location. When the work is finished, it will be returned to its home in Town Hall Square. That decision was made following a city-wide poll. Nearly 70% of Rouen residents voted in favor of the former French emperor. The results were published on Monday. Locally, the results are seen as a victory against woke ideology. The debate over the Napoleon statue is part of a larger trend going on in the US and the UK, that is, the removal of statues of historical figures.
Sometimes we say, what happens in the US happens in France, after some years. I'm very surprised about these statues being dismantled. Lincoln in the U.S.? This is unbelievable. I'm very surprised. I know many historians in the United States who are reliable experts, and they are all against it.
In France, this trend hit home during the anniversary of Napoleon's death in May this year. French President Emmanuel Macron only gave a formal ceremony with no emphasis on Napoleon's heritage. So far, no statues in France have been dismantled. David Vives, NTD News.
Authorities say at least 75 people are dead in Haiti. This is after a gasoline tanker overturned and exploded. What followed was a fireball that swept through homes and businesses. The blast occurred shortly after midnight in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti's second largest city along the northern coast. Early reports indicate that the tanker was trying to avoid an oncoming motorcycle when it flipped. The gasoline spilled toward a pile of burning garbage and caught on fire. A severe gasoline shortage in the country likely contributed to the high death toll. Haitians desperate for fuel rushed to the scene with buckets to scoop up the truck's contents when it ignited. Since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, powerful gangs have taken control of the fuel supply, creating an extreme shortage. That sent fuel prices on the black market spiraling and forced businesses to close. NASA's James Webb Space Telescope is going to be launched next week. The telescope was finished years late and costs far more than planned, but NASA hopes the instrument may expand our understanding of the universe, including its earliest stages. Let's take a look.
The goals of the mission include searching for the first galaxies or luminous objects formed in the early phases of the universe, and learning how galaxies evolved from their initial birth to the present day. NASA says Webb is going to push beyond what the Hubble telescope was able to do.
It's going to be sensitive to galaxies that are more distant and younger, that really formed closer to the start of the universe. So in that way, we're going to see towards the beginning of the universe closer than ever before with Webb.
The Webb telescope is designed to be about 100 times more sensitive than the Hubble telescope. It's due to blast off on December 22nd on a rocket from French Guiana in South America.
After completing mid-course corrections, the Webb telescope passes the orbit of the moon. The mid-booms extend and the sun's shield assumes its hexagonal tennis court-sized shape. Discoveries made by this observatory will rewrite textbooks, inspiring the next generation of future engineers and scientists. This revolutionary tool will provide mankind with an unprecedented view into the birth of the first stars and galaxies.
The telescope cost $8.8 billion to develop. The total price tag, including operational expenses, is almost $10 billion. Other than studying the early phases of the universe, scientists plan to use the telescope to study exoplanets, which are planets beyond our solar system.
When we look at a blank part of sky and see distant galaxies that we didn't realize were there before, or we look at the atmosphere of an exoplanet and we discover a molecule that we didn't appreciate would be there before, and we have to figure out, okay, what does that mean now? And what does that mean for our understanding of how the universe works?
After launch, the Webb telescope will deploy on a month-long million-mile journey to a more distant orbit than Hubble, beyond the moon.
And coming up, a company in Sweden hopes to have invented flying cars that look like oversized drones and provide a quiet and vibration-free flying experience. And the world's largest collection of Christmas ornaments belongs to a Welsh lady known as Nana Baubles. We'll take a look after the break.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. Before all this started, I had already written in my memoir, I dedicate this book to anyone that's looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible. To thank you all for your support, I'm offering some of my best prices ever on MyPillow products, including this exclusive bundle. You get my book and these 5 MyPillows. They all have beautiful scenes and verses from the Bible, such as Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. This 6-pack bundle is regularly $219. Now it's just $99.98 and free shipping with your promo code. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below. Thank you and God bless.
A company in Sweden hopes to have invented the future of flying vehicles. In what looks like an oversized drone, the quiet and vibrationless motion gives a unique flying experience. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more.
This is a personal electric flying vehicle known as Jetson 1. It is something the Swedish company who built it hopes will be the future means of transport.
We want people to be able, like in 10 years from now, to substitute their car and to have maybe a product like this.
The Jetson 1 can take off and land vertically. It carries one person, and the company says it takes 5 minutes to learn how to fly it. It has 4 horizontally mounted propellers, one at each corner of the vehicle, like a small civilian radio-controlled drone.
I mean, I've flown both fixed-wing aircraft. I've been a pilot for 20 years. I've flown helicopters and stuff. This is like nothing like that.
The company founder and president says, unlike helicopters and small aircraft, the ride with the Jetson 1 is completely free of vibration or turbulence.
Even if you fly straight, it's steady. It feels a little bit like a magic carpet, and it induces this profound, almost ecstatic feeling of experiencing flight.
Current batteries limit the use of the flying vehicle to an 18-minute run, but future advances could mean it will last longer. It costs around £70,000 and can reach a top speed of about 60 miles per hour. But for these to become commonplace, there are obstacles to overcome, like an entire legal framework surrounding the use of personal flying vehicles. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
A Welsh lady known as Nana Baubles has officially got the world's largest collection of Christmas ornaments. Guinness World Records awarded the title on Wednesday. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the story.
A Welsh woman known as Nana Baubles has broken a world record for collecting nearly 1,800 Christmas ornaments.
It's a wonderful experience. It's wonderful. Whenever I go anywhere and I see a bauble I like, I fetch it home, especially during the Christmas time.
Sylvia Pope from Swansea says her haul continues to grow.
When my grandchildren brought their children here and they saw what I'd done to the ceiling, they were, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Every year they can't wait for them to go up. They know that it's coming towards Christmas. There's a few more that I have to add to this year's collection.
Sylvia explains why Christmas is so special to her.
We didn't have a lot. We weren't very well off. And that's why when it comes to Christmas now, I will do what I can to afford, what I can afford to do a good Christmas for the children.
In a range of colours and designs, the baubles come from many places, including Buckingham Palace. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.